All right, next up is a gentleman that I have known for a long, long time. I used to call him the Father Flanagan of the Austrian economics movement. This gentleman has probably helped create more PhD economists in the Austrian school, and actually get them in classrooms around the country and around the world to actually start possibly teaching economics that might involve freedom and sound money. If you run into one, if one of your students runs into one, this gentleman is probably someone you need to thank. He is the recipient of the Mises Institute's highest honor, the Barry Schlarbaum Award, and I think he's a dual citizen, I believe. Spends most of his time in the Crescent City, but he's up here in beautiful Vancouver a lot. And you've already heard from him earlier today, but now you get the meat of his wisdom this afternoon. Please help me welcome Dr. Walter Block.
I've been asked to speak about memes. Memes are the ideology as genes are the biology. According to the Wikipedia, meme is an idea, behavior, or style that spreads from one person to another within a culture. A meme acts as a unit for carrying out cultural ideas, symbols, or practices that can be transmitted from one mind to another through writing, speech, gestures, rituals, other phenomena. The word meme is a short name modeled on gene to imitate, and was coined by the British evolutionary biologist Richard Dawkins in The Selfish Gene. I'm going to read all of the memes that I've got on my list. I'm hoping to get through them all. And I will be taking a different view on certain of them, different than has been articulated here. For example, I've got them in alphabetical order. Authoritarian, I'll be coming in favor of that. Animalization, child porn, civil war, collectivism, I'll be taking the positive side of collectivism, coveting, loyalty. Is that better?
Yeah.
A little
Closer?
Real close.
Is that better? The problem with some people is they're too far away and you can't hear them, and other people it's too close in the P's. So I want to get it just right. Is this good now?
Yeah.
I've been reading the list of the memes that I'll go over in alphabetical order, and I'm up to the C's: coveting, developing countries, discrimination, diversity in academia, drug legalization, fair trade, fair tax, free rider, gap, various gaps, the golden rule, harm, hierarchies, human rights and property rights, labeling, people say don't label me, language, correct language, lifestyle, libertarians, using the means, opportunism, Ron Paul, politics, profiling, prejudice, privilege, profiteer, property is theft, red states, blue states, religion, rent-seeking, schooling, secession, social justice, something for nothing, spanking, and I'll be taking a very different view than you've heard about spanking. Stakeholder, tax expenditures, tax subsidies, thick and thin libertarianism, tolerance, ultra-conservative, and unearned income. So those are the memes that I'll try to get through. I'm not sure I'll get through all of them, but I'll try to take a good hack at them. And I will be using libertarian eyeglasses at all. I'll be looking at all of these as a libertarian. And what I mean by libertarianism is somebody who takes seriously the non-aggression axiom, the non-aggression principle, and private property rights based on homestead. So let me start with authoritarianism. I've heard authoritarianism denigrated here. I'm in favor of authoritarianism as long as it's voluntary. Within academia, there are some professors who say you don't want to be a sage on the stage, you want to be a guide on the side. Well, my view is if you don't think you can be a sage, you shouldn't be a professor if you don't have anything to profess. To attack authoritarianism is to attack specialization and division of labor. Look, when I go to a doctor, and I know nothing about doctors, or when I go or when I have a problem with my computer and I'm not a nerd, they're authoritarians. I'm happy to bow to their authority. I hire them as authoritarians. Now, you have to distinguish, of course, between compulsory authoritarians and involuntary authoritarians, but I've heard authoritarianism per se being besmirched here, and I'm here to defend authoritarianism, and maybe I'll stick it in my next Defending the Undefendable book. There's nothing wrong with authoritarianism per se, as long as it's voluntary, and there's everything wrong with it if it's coercive, but the problem with it is the coercion, not the authoritarianism. So, I'm pro-authoritarianism. Next one, atomization of society. People criticize libertarians for favoring atomization. We're individualists, we favor no connections. That's nonsense. We favor mediating institutions, neighborhood, religious group, family, friends, what have you. Well, we libertarians don't think that they say no man is an island. Well, you don't have to be an island. You can have connections with the people as long as they're voluntary. Blackmail. I heard blackmail being besmirched. Blackmail is fine. Blackmail is just a threat to do something you have every right to do. Namely, I have a right to gossip about you, don't I? Free speech? Well, I'm just asking you. You see, if you're in the hands of a gossip, it's case over. The secret is out. But if you're in the hands of a blackmailer, at least he has the decency to come and say, "Look, give me $1,000 and I'll shut up." Whereas the blabbermouth gossip, nothing. Now you have to distinguish a blackmail from extortion. Extortion is making a threat with a demand for money, where the thing that you're threatening is illicit. Like, I'll shoot you or I'll blow up your kids or something like that. That would be illicit. The next one is child porn. There was a case in Canada where somebody was talking about child porn without denigrating it totally, and he was just excoriated. Well, there are child cartoons of kiddie porn. No children involved, just cartoons, and they put you in jail for that. They put you in jail for that on the ground, and it'll lead to actual abuse of children. Well, if you talk about lead to, you shouldn't read the Bible. There's stuff there that's no good, and people get excited about it. There are movies that have gangs fighting each other, or boxing. We shouldn't have boxing because that might lead people to start boxing other people against their will. So that's crazy. Also, how about real child porn? Can that be defended? Well, to me, the ideal relationship of parents and children is guardianship. You have to guard the child's life, uber alles. That's the key. Keep the kid alive. Now, suppose I'm very poor and I've got a 5-year-old child, and the only way to keep him alive is to let him engage in child porn, put him in a pornographic movie, and let him have intercourse against him without his will. If that's the only way to save his life, if I'm the guardian, I've got to keep him alive. We'll do therapy later. He'll be in trouble. Okay, maybe. Who knows? But I've got to keep him alive. So child porn is not per se a violation of libertarian law. It depends on the context. Now, in the context, if you allow your child to do such a thing, you're obviously guilty of child abuse, and the full extent of the law should jump down your throat. But child porn per se we have to be careful with that. The Civil War. Look, the Civil War is two groups, each one wanting to take over the whole country. Like the Spanish Civil War was the commies against the fascists. They each wanted to run all of Spain. In 1861, there weren't two groups that both wanted to run the whole country. The South wanted to secede. It didn't want to take over the country, so it wasn't a civil war. It was a war of secession, or a war to prevent secession, or the war between the North and the South, or the war of northern aggression, or whatever you want to call it. Collectivism. Now, collectivism has been bashed here, and there's no reason for it. There's nothing wrong with collectivism. Look, we're a collective here. We all gathered together. We collected together under this authoritarian over here who brought us together. Nothing wrong with collectivism. If you're against collectivism and you're in favor of individualism, well, that means you're against team sports and you're only for individual sports. That's absolutely nonsensical that somehow track and swimming and singles tennis are okay because they're individualistic, but basketball, football, and soccer and hockey are no good because they're collective? That's just ludicrous. Where does this craziness stem from? It comes from Ayn Rand, who used to joke about the senior collective because collective was so easy, so they had this sarcastic view that they were the senior collective. Another one was this group called the New Individualist Review, which is okay. I'm not against individualism either, but why don't we have the New Collectivist Review as a libertarian thing? Oh Coveting is just an internal thought. You can covet whatever you want and be compatible with libertarianism. Just don't grab the stuff that you're coveting if it belongs to someone else, or if it's a relationship of marriage, you covet your neighbor's wife, fine, covet all you want. Just keep your midst to yourself. Developing countries. They keep calling them developing countries. Most of them are retrogressing countries. They're not developing, they're going the other way. There's this cargo cult. The idea here that the people in the Stone Age, they see the airplanes coming in and they disgorge products. So what they do in the jungle is they make a path and they make little planes to sort of entice the big ones to come in there. This is the idea that if you call them developing, they'll be developing. That's magical thinking. We were talking about Janand in India with magical thinking. That's magical thinking. Some countries are developing, others are retrogressing, and others are standing still. And why call them all developing countries? Discrimination. It used to be before the politically correct times, discrimination was good. He's a discriminating person, it's a compliment. Look, if you're really against discrimination, you have to be in favor of compulsory bisexuality. Because male heterosexuals are evil, because they discriminate against half the human race as a possible dead partner. Female heterosexuals are equally evil, because they too discriminate against half the human race, and the same with male homosexuals, that they too don't want to go to bed with half the human race, and also lesbians. Only bisexuals don't discriminate on that basis. But even they discriminate. They discriminate on the basis of sense of humor, looks, intelligence, whatever. So everyone discriminates. Why should discrimination be such a negative thing? Diversity in academia. Diversity means you get a lesbian Marxist, you get a black Marxist, you get a feminist Marxist. You get all the different kinds of Marxists and feminists and black studiesists and queer studiesists and different views, but you never get a free enterpriser because free enterprises just beyond repair. Drug legalization. I'm in favor of drug legalization, in spite of the fact that the government will tax it and get more money. But there are some people who favor drug legalization because they'll tax it and get more money. The government has already got too much money. So I think the libertarian position is you favor legalization, but you don't favor it because they'll tax it and have more money. You do it in spite of it. Fair trade. Well, fair trade free trade is the good stuff. Fair trade means you can't trade unless you have good labor unions and you have environmental this and that and the other, and they have fair trade coffee and fair trade this, and all around Canada, they're really rabid in Canada, even more than the United States and the US as well, that we should have fair trade everything. Fair tax. The only fair tax is a zero tax. So what's with this fair tax? Taxes are compulsory. We never agreed to be part of the government club. They say, if you join the golf club or the tennis club, you have to pay your dues. Okay, fine, but you agreed to join. But nobody agreed to join the Canada Club, or the Club of Canada, or the Club of the US. Nobody agreed to that, so therefore taxes are compulsory. They're a violation of the libertarian axiom of non-aggression. Then there's this Don't Fence Me In, and all these movies, songs about where the deer and the antelope play. This is just commie crapola. You have the tragedy of the commons. What's the tragedy of the commons? If the deer and the antelope and the buffalo are allowed to run free, we kill them, and we don't save them. Whereas the cow, which is sort of biologically roughly the same thing as the buffalo, they're big and fat, and they give milk, and they have horns, and this and that and the other. The cow never came within 1 million miles of extinction because they're always owned privately, and they were never allowed to run free. So we don't want freedom for animals. We want them to be owned so that they can be protected and that they can survive. Because if they're allowed to run free, they become endangered and they go extinct. The next one is the free rider. In economics, among the mainstream, not Austrians, not free market people, there are all sorts of market failures. There's public goods and monopoly, and the way they do monopoly, they calculate concentration ratios. How much of the industry do the top 4 firms account for? And if they account for too much, they say it's a monopoly. Well, to the Austrian or to the libertarian, it depends on how they get the concentration. If they get it by selling a better product at a lower price, God bless them. If they get it by cronyism, maybe the government makes a rule against their competitors, well then that's not good. So it's not a matter of concentration, it's a matter of how you got the concentration. Well, a very similar thing occurs with the free rider. The idea here is that if I go to school and I'll go to school for personal reasons, one, I'll get a better job, I'll meet a better mate, I'll be more interesting, and that's non-school, that's okay. But then I'll vote better, I'll be less likely to be a criminal, I'll benefit you. And if I benefit you, I have a right to tax you. So that's why we can justify public schooling, which is an abomination. So I certainly oppose the free rider, which is sort of a technical thing within economics. Murray Rothbard says we're all free riders on civilization. I mean, I never paid Mozart anything, and yet I'm a free rider on Mozart. I can hear him, and it's just lovely. The next one is we've got to reduce the education gap between black and white. Why don't we reduce the basketball gap? Nobody talks about the basketball gap. You know, white men can't jump, and it's really unfair. Those guys have got springs in their legs, and they can jump 20 feet and dunk the basketball, and we can jump about 6 inches or something like that. And 6 inches come in another context too that I won't mention. There are all sorts of gaps here, and why do we focus on certain gaps and not other kinds of gaps? They say, well, the number of coaches of football and basketball is not proportional to the number of players. But it's way higher than the proportion of the population. Blacks are only about 14% of the population, and they're about 70% of the NFL and 80% or 85% of the National Basketball Association. That's unfair. Where is there room for short, fat Jewish guys who can't jump? There's a gigantic gap, and we've got to close that gap. The golden rule. See, I'm getting up to the G's. I'm moving along here. The golden rule, everyone says, well, the golden rule is great. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. But I'm a masochist. I want you to beat me. You know the joke, the masochist has to say this, beat me, and the state says, no. Letting that to the masochist. You perverts hurt that. But the point is that just because I want to be beaten doesn't mean I can beat you. So the libertarian axiom of non-aggression is much more consonant with libertarianism than the golden rule. I mean, the golden rule is sort of a good first approximation, but you have this fatal exception of the masochist. The next one is harm. Sometimes libertarians say you can do anything you want as long as you don't harm people. But we can harm each other in all sorts of legitimate ways. I bought this pen. I raised the prices of pens an infinitesimally small amount because the demand curve shifted to the right and I bought an extra pen. Well, I've harmed all of you who now have to pay a little bit more for a pen. Or I sell a wristwatch and the prices of wristwatches come down compared to the situation where I didn't sell the wristwatch, and therefore all wristwatch owners have been harmed because the capital value of their wristwatch is slightly lower. So we can harm each other in all sorts of ways. Two guys want to date the same gal, and the first guy gets the dater. He harmed the second guy. I mean, competition is necessarily harmful to the people who lose, so there's nothing wrong with harm. Well, there's nothing wrong with harm from a libertarian point of view, and what libertarianism is a question of under what conditions is it justified to use violence. And it's justified to use violence against rapists and murderers, but not against people who buy and sell things or who compete, whether for women or for men or for customers or whatever. Hierarchical. I heard the criticism of hierarchy. Nothing wrong with hierarchy as long as it's voluntary. I used to play the violin in an orchestra. I'm not very good at it. I'm what's called a hit violinist. If you have a neighbor you hate, you hire me to play near his house, and it's really silly. And every time I did a wrong note, the guy with the podium with the baton would say, block, shape up. And you know what he did with the wind player? He told the wind to breathe. Now, can you imagine anything more intrusive? Even slave owners never told their slaves when to breathe. They told them when not to breathe when they killed them. But otherwise, they're picking cotton. They don't say, you're not breathing in sync with everyone else. But if you play the trumpet or the piccolo, you have to breathe when the conductor says. That's pretty hierarchical, but everyone in the orchestra is there voluntarily, so it's okay. Nothing wrong with that. Human rights over property rights. Our friends on the left are always saying, well, we favor human rights, not property rights. But property rights, who do you think has property rights? This pen doesn't have property rights. I have property rights in the pen. It's similar to people in urban when I say, well, the city street should be for people, not cars. Who do they think is driving the cars if not people? Look, the reason we have property rights is because we live in an era or a milieu of scarcity. We don't have enough of everything we want. We want more than we have. So we have to determine who gets to use this pen, who gets to use this shirt, who gets to use this tie, and that's what we have rules. So it's simple, and we know who can use what. So that's all property rights are. There's nothing wrong with property rights, and Proudhon says property is theft. He's a maniac. I mean, what he's saying is we shouldn't have rules to figure out who uses what, and then you should have a crunch. Every time somebody wants to use something, people start grabbing and fighting. That's no way to run a railroad. That's no way to run a society. Labels. People say, don't label me. I don't want to be labeled. That's crazy. Look, if you look at the chemistry thing of the periodic table, chemistry consists practically of nothing more than labeling. Nothing wrong with labeling. Biology consists of nothing more than labeling. Species, genus, this, that, the other. There's nothing wrong with labeling. Every word you use in the English language is a label. So if you're really serious about not wanting to be labeled, shut up. Because if you open your mouth, you're labeling. I mean, you're distinguishing by just using the word the. It distinguishes from or but or blue or something like that. So there's nothing wrong with labeling, and yet a lot of people say, oh, how dare you label me? Language. Language is very important. The only way we're going to ever convert the heathen to the one true faith, libertarianism, well, either with a gun or by language. And we shouldn't pick up the gun because they're more than us and they're better at it than us. We have no specialization, division of labor, comparative advantage in guns. All we got is words. So words are very important. And if they cram their words down our throat, we can't use our words to convert them. We're at a loss. Ms. It's no longer correct to say Mrs. or Miss. You have to say Ms. Well, this is sort of an attack on heterosexuality. Because from a man's point of view, you want to know if this gal over here looks pretty good. Is she married or not? And does she have a ring or not? That's one way of telling. And another way is she Mrs. or Miss? It used to be that women went to college to get their MRS degree. To say that nowadays is, anathema. You're not supposed to say that. But if we have to use their words to make our point, then we've sort of lost half the battle. So I think we have to insist. It used to be called Mr. and Master to distinguish married and unmarried men, and that's okay. I'm not against distinctions, but it's much more important to distinguish women because I hate to be sexist about it, but most men are the ones who initiate things between the sexes, and men have to be clear on who they should be initiating things with and who they shouldn't, otherwise you get problems. So you can't say penmanship anymore because you've got the word man. You can't say fisherman or straw man argument. You can't even say woman because the M-A-N, W-O-M-A-N, the last one is the last phrase or the last whatever is man. So you have to say whoa daughter or something like that. I mean, if they were to be consistent, you could never use the word man. And our language would be ruined, but they don't mind that. Anything to promote their memes. Lifestyle libertarian. This is why a lot of people in the Beltway, the Cato people, didn't like Ron Paul, because he wasn't a lifestyle libertarian. What's a lifestyle libertarian? A lifestyle libertarian, you have to like homosexuals. You don't have to be gay, but you have to like homosexuals. You have to work out at the gym. You have to be cosmopolitan. You can't have any prejudices, and you have to live liberty. And Ron Paul wasn't like that. He didn't have good suits. His eyebrows were a little long for something. So people like David Rose were saying, well, he's an embarrassment. He's not a good spokesman for liberty. Give me a break. I mean, there's no such thing as lifestyle libertarianism. Libertarianism just means keep your bloody mitts to yourself. Don't grab other people or their properties, and that's it. And you can be a hermit. You can hate people. You can love people. You can do anything else you want. You can like chess better than checkers or like checkers better than chess. Look, there are lots of things that are irrelevant to libertarianism. And these lifestyle questions are irrelevant to libertarianism. Don't use other people as means. Treat them as ends in themselves. No. You can use other people as means. I bought this pen. I used the pen guy as a pen purveyor. Wasn't that evil of me? I mean, I used him as a means. My computer didn't work. I got a computer repairman in, and I used him as a means to fix my computer. He used me as a means to get money. We had a trade. Nothing wrong with using people as means. Now, if you shoot them, and they haven't first initiated violence against you, okay, that's bad. But nothing wrong. I mean, what are we against trade and barter? We use each other as means. That's part of civilization. There's nothing wrong with using people as means. Opportunistic. Nothing wrong with being opportunistic, and yet that's sort of another curse word. What it really means is you're stealing from people. Well, if you're stealing, say stealing, say theft. But opportunistic means seizing opportunities, being entrepreneurial. So that's another word that sort of rankles with me. Ron Paul. We've heard people criticizing Ron Paul. Wendy McElroy, who I respect greatly, is a wonderful libertarian, and Stephen attacks Ron Paul. A lot of people attack Ron Paul. We owe our movement to Ron Paul and others. The younger people, much more so than middle-aged people and older people who might come in through Ayn Rand. But Ron Paul is phenomenal. He politicized us to a great degree, not only in the U.S., not only in Canada, but around the world. There are Ron Paul admiration societies, and we're whining about Ron Paul because he's not perfect on this, or his dress isn't good, or God knows what. Politics. People say, well, we shouldn't do politics because all politicians are evil. They're not all evil. Ron Paul isn't evil. He never did anything. Well, I disagree with him on one or two issues, but apart from that, and libertarians disagree, look, Ron Paul is a pro-lifer. Murray Rothbard was a pro-choicer. Our movement is divided on this issue. So if Ron Paul takes one of the other views, I can't say he's not a libertarian because the experts in libertarianism don't agree on that. That's one issue I disagree with him on. Another one is immigration. Again, libertarians are very widely diverged on this, so you can't blame him for that. Apart from these two things, and maybe one or two others, as far as I can see, he's a perfect libertarian. He never did anything wrong. He was called Dr. No. He kept voting against all the bad stuff. He tried to, he didn't want to audit the Fed, he wanted to get rid of the Fed, but as a means toward getting rid of it, he wanted to audit it. He didn't succeed, but he tried, and in trying, he converted millions of people to libertarianism, and he enthused the libertarian movement. He's just magnificent, and it's all right if the commies at MSNBC criticize him, or the fascists at Fox do. That's okay, what the heck. But for libertarians to criticize him, he's our bread and butter, he's our leader, he's our publicizer, and we should be grateful to him. Look, I'm not saying everyone should become a politician. I'm saying that there are many, many roads to libertarianism. There's politics, there's education, there's think tanks, books, Free State Project, businessmen making money. There are lots of ways to go. As Uncle Mao said, let 1,000 flowers bloom. Let 1,000 flowers bloom for libertarianism. And let's not say, well, that one I don't like. If you don't like it, don't do it. But don't denigrate people who are doing it, as long as they're doing it compatible with libertarianism. Now, not every libertarian politician is really a libertarian. There are other people who are less libertarian who say they are libertarians or claim the libertarian mantle. Certainly Bob Barr was an embarrassment. He was no libertarian at all. But there are, it's not per se a violation of liberty to vote or to run for office or anything like that. I ran for office in 1969. I ran for the New York State Assembly, which is the lower house of New York State, and I didn't compromise liberty. I was going to vote against everything. I never got in, but what the heck? There's nothing per se wrong with politics. If that's not your thing.
Except for politicians.
Not all politicians. Ron Paul was Dr. No. There's nothing wrong with what Ron Paul did. I don't think, well, I disagree with some of his votes on abortion and on immigration, okay, but what the heck? Pretty much he was 99.44% pure. He didn't do anything wrong. Read Lysander Spooner if you think that there's something per se wrong with politics. Lysander Spooner said, I'm putting in my own words, suppose you were a slave, and the slave master said, I'll let you vote for Overseer A or Overseer B. Overseer A will beat you every day, 3 times a day. Overseer B will only beat you once a week. And now the slave's vote is to which overseer? Does that mean that they support slavery? No, it's just that they want to be beaten less. Nothing wrong with that. Okay, the next one is prejudice. He's prejudiced, that's no good. Prejudice just means you're prejudging. There's nothing wrong with prejudging based on past experience. We have a thing in science called deduction, and we also have induction. Walter Williams tells a story. You walk into this room, there's a tiger sitting on the couch. And what do? You go over and shake hands with this tiger and say, well, are you a vicious tiger or are you a nice tiger? No, you use induction to be prejudiced. You prejudge this tiger. Nothing wrong with prejudging based on empirical evidence or past experience. So prejudice is okay. Even Jesse Jackson once said that if you walk down this street and there were 3 Hasidic Jewish boys, 18, and over here there were 3 young black men, he'd walk this way because the crime rate of Hasidic boys is very low and the crime rate of young black men is very high. So there's nothing wrong with being prejudiced or prejudging. It's a scientific thing. We have deduction and we have induction. And there's nothing wrong with using induction. I'll take questions afterward. Privilege. Another one is, I just finished prejudging. And look, there's nothing wrong with prejudging. It's induction. We have deduction, we have induction. Both are part of the scientific method. The next one is privilege. He comes from a privileged area. All that they mean is rich. You have to distinguish between legitimate privilege and illegitimate privilege. Just to say somebody's privileged doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with them. If they're wealthy because of honest labor and entrepreneurship, God bless them. If they're privileged because they've stolen money, whether illegal or illegally, that's very bad. Profiteer. That's another word. Incidentally, at one time I said there's no such thing as a wage eater, which would be the equivalent of a profiteer. But Michael Milken made $1/3 million a year as a wage employee, so he was a wage eater. Nothing wrong with earning lots of money. The more you earn honestly is an indication that you're helping the public good, you're helping other people. Because the only way you can legitimately earn money on the market is by offering people an option that they didn't have. You make them better off. If you weren't making them better off, they wouldn't trade with you. When, what's his name, the computer guy from Microsoft, Bill Gates, he did some things wrong, but by and large, the way he made his money was by giving people stuff that they wanted. He made a lot of money, which indicates that he did well. He promoted the public good. So there's nothing wrong with a profiteer. Another one is property is theft. I don't see that the property is theft. This is another argument that people use against the free market system, and there's nothing wrong with making a profit as long as you make it honestly. Because every time you make a profit, you do so by enriching other people. The only way I can make a profit honestly is by selling you something that you value more than the price. So I want to make a profit on this watch, and I sell it for $2, and you value it at $3. You make a profit, I make a profit because I value it less. Every trade is mutually profitable. Another one is red states versus blue states. I can never get clear as to which is which. Somehow the red states are good or bad. They've sort of got it backwards. The red states are the Republicans and the blue states are the Democrats. But the reds are the commies, they're on the left, so the Democrats should be the red. That's a confusing one. Another one is religion. A lot of people are anti-religious, especially in the libertarian movement. But there's nothing wrong with religion per se. Religion is a belief in a higher being or a spiritual being or whatever, as long as they don't use any violence to beat on an atheist. But as long as they leave me alone, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with religion. And yet, Ayn Rand is vitriolically opposed to religion. Religion isn't the enemy unless they want to have a pogrom or something where they want to force us to be in their religion or to take up a religion. The next one is let me see what's my social justice. Let me try another one. Something for nothing. People say you shouldn't get something for nothing. Nothing wrong with getting something for nothing if it's voluntary. The market is getting something for nothing entirely. So I think getting something for nothing, voluntary charity is part of that. There's nothing wrong with that at all. Spanking. Let's talk about spanking. Spanking children. I've heard here people saying that this is improper. I think the libertarian view of non-aggression applies only to adults. It doesn't apply to children. Because if you were serious about non-spanking children, not using any violence against children whatsoever, treating children like adults, the problem with that is that children are uncivilized. They're likely to get in trouble. You have to watch out for them. My son, when he was very young, wanted to, it's sort of awkward, but I'll say it anyway. He was very young, maybe 2 or 3, and when he went to the urinal, he wanted to put his penis on the urinal, and I didn't want him to do it because I thought there were diseases. And I used violence to stop it because I thought he'd catch something. I didn't spank him. I think spanking is only a last resort, but to say that you can't use violence against children, look, if you give a kid a timeout, it's not kidnapping. I mean, if I gave you a timeout and I said, you have to stand in the corner, you're kidnapping. I mean, children are little animals. You have to train them to become civilized. And this idea that there's something wrong with a timeout. I mean, if I gave you a timeout, it's called kidnapping. Right? I mean, how else are we going to civilize these young folk if we don't use some sort of violence against them? Now, obviously, there's such a thing as child abuse, and you don't want to use child abuse against a child. But to say that you can't use any force against a child is to treat the children like an adult, and they're not adults. They're helpless. My son, when he was 3 years old, the ball goes out in the street, and he wants to go right out after it, and I, used violence. Not really bad violence, but I tried to tell him not to, and I fenced him in, and I did all sorts of stuff that if I did it to an adult, if I fenced one of you in, it would be called kidnapping. If I didn't fence in my son, it would be called child abuse because I'm letting him run out in traffic. So we have to treat children in a very different way than we treat adults. Another one is thick and thin libertarianism. What's going on there? I'm a thin libertarian. What does thin libertarianism mean? Thin libertarianism is the idea private property rights and non-aggression axiom, and that's pretty much what libertarianism is. Thick libertarianism is the idea that you have to be nice, or something like that, or you have to be nice to people. You can't just limit yourself to the non-aggression axiom. There are all sorts of other things that are added on to libertarianism. So I'm a thin. It's got nothing to do with whether you need to lose weight or something. I'm a thin libertarianism in the sense that I think the only thing that is relevant is the non-aggression axiom. Whereas there's nothing else to involve in libertarianism but that. Whereas these other people try to add other things. For example, the right-wing thick libertarians like Toppy say that sometimes something wrong with homosexuality. Whereas the left-wing thick libertarians like Roderick Long say you have to love homosexuals. You have to be nice to them or something. I think the thin libertarianism says you just have to not aggress against anyone and that's it. You don't have to love or hate anyone. You can hate everyone as long as you don't use violence against them. I mean, you could be just a nasty person, and I hate everybody, but I never aggress against anyone. I'm a thin libertarian, and I'm okay. tolerance. You don't have to be tolerant to be a libertarian. I can be intolerant as long as I want. All I have to do is keep my wits to myself. I can't use violence against other people, but I don't have to like anyone. I can say you're all a bunch of bums and I hate you all, and that's it. And I'm still a libertarian as long as I don't use violence against you. It's interesting that there are ultra-conservatives, but there are no ultra-liberals. I'm not sure why that works out. I guess it's because liberals are more in charge of language than conservatives. One last one is this thing called unearned income. Now, the way they mean it, unearned income is dividends and stocks and things like that. To me, unearned income is theft. Anything that is voluntary would be earned income. Okay, I've gone through a whole bunch of different memes, and I'd like to take a few questions or have some comments on this.
Hi, Walter. Thanks for the talk. Sounded to me like you kind of made an exception there for violence in the case of spanking. And I think you were saying that children are kind of unintelligent or unable to make decisions, so violence is okay in that respect. So I'm wondering if you just maybe clarify if it's just something to do with age or if you're talking about intelligence. So could you then justify, say, if a drug addict or somebody who has a very low intelligence, could violence be used in that case, or is it simply age that's the distinguishing factor?
Well, it's age, roughly age. Look, I hate to tell tales, but when my son was a little boy, and I took him to the bathroom, he was big enough to just barely get over the toilet bowl to urinate. He wanted to let his penis on the bowl. And I didn't want him to do that. So I picked him up, put him on my shoes, whatever. He didn't want that. And I used violence against him. Anyway, I held him against that because I thought, well, he might get sick or get a disease. I'm sorry?
But you didn't spank him.
No, I didn't spank him for that, but I used violence against him. Look, if I grabbed one of you and pulled you up so you couldn't touch your penis to the toilet, that would be assault and battery. I used assault and battery at him because I wanted to safeguard his health. He used to throw sand at his little sister. My idea, my wife overruled this, but my idea is throw sand at him, get it in his eyes, show him how it feels. My wife said, no, distract him. What the heck? That's an internal problem. But look, some people say, give him a timeout instead. But look, if I gave you a timeout, that would be kidnapping. Go stand over there. You say, are you crazy? I'm not going to do that. See, look, kids are different than adults. They're weird. They're not fully rational. They do all sorts of things that hurt themselves. And spanking as a last resort, when he hit his little sister, I would give him a little spanking. Not child abuse, God forbid. But there's an escalation, a timeout, the loss of privileges, whatever. But if that doesn't work, to safeguard his little sister or safeguard him, he just wanted to run out and play in traffic, and I didn't like that too much. There's nothing wrong with loving, gentle spanking, even though if I spanked you and we weren't in a voluntary sadomasochistic relationship, we would consider it assault and battery. But children are different. This idea that I think it's a misconstrual of the non-aggression axiom or the non-aggression principle to apply to children holus bolus without any exceptions. Children, they're weird. They need paternalism is justified for children. That's what paternalism is. And don't tell me a timeout is better, because a timeout is kidnapping. If I gave you a timeout and said you have to go stand in the corner, you'd say, what, are you crazy? That's kidnapping. But you have to do something with them. Because they're little savages. They hit their little sister and they hurt themselves. And any rational way of bringing up children, again, I'm not talking about child abuse, God forbid. Burning them with a cigarette. That's just a little crazy. But to not have any physical violence against a child, assuming that a timeout, standing in the corner, that's physical violence. So according to the strict idea that you can't, we have this non-aggression axiom for libertarianism. Fine. If you apply to children as you would to adults, you don't deserve to have kids. because kids are different and you have to discipline them. Whereas if I disciplined an adult, it would be considered assault and battery.
I rise in defense of Ron Paul. A number of people have called Ron a politician, and I would like to object to that. He was my congressman for a number of years. And a politician is someone who asks for your vote. He goes to Washington and he works on making deals and compromises. As far as I know, I don't think Ron ever compromised his principles. So I would highly prefer that we redefine politicians as all that other trash that we have to deal with. And Ron Paul is a statesman because he told us exactly what he was going to do when he went to Washington. And he went to Washington and did that.
Well, I think you're making a good point to distinguish Ron Paul from other politicians, but a guy in Congress, if he's not a politician, then I think you're misusing the language or you're making up language as you go along. The ordinary common language is if you get to be a congressman, you're a politician.
You can be a statesman.
Well, a statesman is just a good politician. But he was a politician. He ran for Congress and he won. And he didn't do anything wrong. He didn't violate the non-aggression act. And that's the key, because with one or two exceptions where I disagree with him, forget about that, because you're always going to disagree on some minor or some small issues. I mean, and the abortion is a very, very complicated issue. So let's forget about that. He never did anything wrong. He was called Dr. No. But he was a politician. He was in politics. And to say, well, he wasn't a politician, I think is confusing language. And we want to be clear on language. And everyone knows him as a politician. And if you just make up words different than they're used by other people, then you can't communicate well with other people, and we want to communicate with other people. He was a good politician. There's nothing wrong with a politician per se who does everything right.
But most people consider a good politician as one who stays bought after you cry.
Yes, well, most people consider a good politician someone who stays bought after you drive him, but we're not talking about that. We're talking about Ron Paul, who was magnificent, and Stephen Molyneux and Wendy McElroy and other people criticize Ron Paul. I defend.
Just a couple of very quick questions. Sorry to get back to your son, but if you pick me up and pull me away from the street because of blocking in front of a car, I wouldn't consider that assault and battery. You're trying to protect, you're trying to help me out. That's what you're doing for your son.
Well,
if you had responded to your son after that and staying for doing it, I think that's not really a problem. If you try to explain to him and say, that's a destructive behavior, then that's just more acceptable.
Well, if you were trying to commit suicide and I grabbed you from jumping off the bridge, say, forget about the on which you call, which complicates it, in a sense, I'm committing assault and battery. I'm committing kidnapping against you. I'm holding you from jumping off the bridge to your death. And my analysis of that is, if I'm going to do that, I should be willing to pay the penalty for it. I grabbed you against your will, and I held you from jumping over, and I'm going to keep you trapped for a whole day where I try to deprogram you out of this. And if you say something to me like, look, I have incurable cancer and I'm in pain all the time, I would help you, and I would aid and abet that. But otherwise, if you said, well, your girlfriend left you, I'd say, well, there are plenty of other girls out there or whatever, and I would try to help you. But if I failed, strictly speaking, I kidnapped you because I held you against your will.
Thank you, Walter. I think we have run out of time. If we could just take a very quick break for the last session and come back here in about 5 minutes or so. Thank you.